Hello everyone, welcome to physics online classes for class 11 students. Let us continue chapter 4 motion in a plane. Today we are going to learn about projectile motion. So this is the last part of this chapter, that is projectile motion. In the previous class we studied introduction to types of motion, that is one dimensional, two dimensional and three dimensional. Motion in one dimension is called motion in a straight line or rectilinear motion or linear motion. Then second one, motion in two dimension is called motion in a plane which is having two dimensions. And the third one, motion in a three dimension which is called motion in space. One dimension, two dimension, three dimension, that is straight line motion, plane and space. Motion in plane, motion in space and motion in straight line. These are the three types of motion. Now let us learn in detail about projectile motion. So before going to study in detail about the projectile motion, let us learn some basic terms related to projectile motion. First we have to know what is a projectile, what is a projectile motion, what are the examples and what are the terms related to projectile motion that we can study. Yes, the first point is about projectile. What is a projectile? Projectile is an object when it is thrown into the space, an object thrown into the space, and this object moves under the effect of gravity alone. This is called projectile. For example, when I am going to throw a ball, that ball is moving in the space and that ball will again come to ground because of gravitational force. It is moving in vertically downward direction when I throw the ball. That is under the effect of gravity alone. There is no other forces than gravitational force. This is called projectile. We are going to project the ball into the space. I am going to project a bullet into the space. Right? So what is a projectile? An object thrown into space which moves under the effect of gravity alone is called projectile. Suppose if a man is standing here, if he is going to throw a ball, so this ball is thrown and this ball is moving in this direction, again it will come back to the ground because of gravitational force. This is called projecting or projectile. Then second point, projectile motion. Yes, projectile motion means the motion of an object when it is thrown into the space under the effect of gravity alone. The motion of object when it is thrown into the space and it is under the effect of gravity. So this is called projectile motion. Yes, what is projectile motion? The motion of an object thrown into space under the effect of gravity alone is called projectile motion. Examples given here, a body released from an aeroplane. If that aeroplane releases any object, any body, that object is moving in the space and it is moving vertically downward. This is because of acceleration due to gravity or gravitational force. Second example, a bullet fired from the gun. When a bullet is fired from the gun, that bullet where it is moving? It is moving in the space and that bullet is under the gravitational force. It is under the effect of gravity. So these are some example for projectile motion. Yes, what is a projectile? An object thrown into space which moves under effect of gravity alone. Other than gravity, other than gravitational force, there is no other forces on that object. Only effect of gravity is present on that body. We can call it as a projectile. Then second one, projectile motion. Yes, what is projectile motion? The motion of an object thrown into space under the effect of gravity alone is called projectile motion. For example, a body released from the aeroplane, a bullet fired from the gun, when a ball is thrown by the boy. So these are moving in the space under the gravitational force. This is called projectile motion. Right? Then Trajectory. Trajectory means this is the path. The path followed by projectile. The path followed by projectile is called trajectory. Suppose now here the ball is moving in the space. Now it is under the gravity. Acceleration due to gravity. This is the ground. This ball will again come back to the ground. This is under gravitational force. The path followed by this projectile, this path is called trajectory. What is a trajectory? Trajectory is the path followed by the projectile. So we are going to call it as a trajectory. Trajectory means what? Path. The path followed by the projectile is called trajectory. Then observe one note point here. The trajectory of a projectile is a parabola. The path of the projectile is always a parabola. We can study in detail how the trajectory of a projectile is a parabola. Means the path of projectile is parabola. So we can study in detail about that later. Then point of projection. What is point of projection? The point from which an object is projected into space is called point of projection. You can take this is a point of projection. What it is? Point of projection. From this point, I am going to project that object into the space. That point we are going to call it as point of projection. Yes, what is point of projection? The point from which an object is projected into the space is called point of projection. Then velocity of projection. Velocity of projection. It is the velocity with which an object is projected into space is called velocity of projection. What is velocity of projection? The velocity with which an object is projected into the space. With how much velocity that object is projected, that velocity we can call it as velocity of projection. Then angle of projection. The angle between direction of projection of an object and horizontal at that point is called angle of projection. Here you can observe this is the projectile motion. So from this point I am going to project the object. It is under gravitational force. Again it will come back to ground. Angle of projection means this is angle between direction of projection and horizontal at that point. Horizontal at that point means ground. The direction of projection of the object and the ground, this gives angle of projection. What is angle of projection? The angle between direction of projection of an object and the horizontal at that point is called angle of projection. Is it clear? Observe all these are the basic points related to projectile motion. What is a trajectory? Trajectory is the path followed by the projectile. What is a point of projection? The point from which the object is projected into the space, that point is called point of projection. Then velocity of projection, the velocity with which an object is projected into the space, that velocity is called velocity of projection. Then angle of projection, angle between direction of projection of object and horizontal at that point is called angle of projection. Is it clear? Now, the next term, assumptions made to study projectile motion. Before going to study about projectile motion, some assumptions are made. What are the assumptions made to study projectile motion? We have to assume some points before going to study about projectile motion. The first point, the projectile is considered as a particle, point mass. Whatever you are going to project in the space, that projectile body, we are going to take it as a particle. If I am going to throw a ball is taken as a particle. The projectile is considered as a particle or point mass. It is taken as a particle because when that particle is in the space, it is far away from the person. It looks like a very tiny particle. So that assumption we have to take here. Then second assumption, the acceleration due to gravity is constant over the range of motion and is directly vertically downwards. See here, when you are going to throw a particle into the space, this particle is moving in the space. Now this particle is under the acceleration due to gravity. It is under the effect of gravity. Here, acceleration due to gravity is constant over the range of motion. So in this range, acceleration due to gravity is taken as constant. And this is always directed vertically downward. We know that acceleration due to gravity A equal to 9.8 meter per second square. This is acceleration due to gravity value. How much? 9.8, or we can take it as a small g. Acceleration due to gravity. So this value is constant over the range of motion because we know that acceleration due to gravity that changes according to the earth surface. According to that area, this value changes. But here we are going to assume acceleration due to gravity is constant over this range of motion and it is directed vertically downward. This is the second assumption. Then come to the third assumption. The effect of air resistance is negligible. Suppose if I am going to throw a ball into the space, when the ball is moving in the space, there is a air resistance occurs. Means that atmosphere, that air particle opposes movement of the ball in the space. Opposition offered by air is taken as negligible. Negligible means zero. That means the air resistance or the opposition offered by air is equal to 0. There is no opposition to this movement of the ball. This assumption we are going to take, that is, the effect of air resistance is negligible. There is no opposition from the air to the particle moving in the space. Right, then the fourth assumption, the rotation of the earth does not affect projectile motion. The rotation of the earth, it will not affect the projectile motion. Because of the rotation of the earth, the projectile motion does not change. That assumption we are going to consider here. So these are the four assumptions that we have to study before going to learn about projectile motion. The first one is the projectile is taken as a particle. Second one, acceleration due to gravity is constant over range of motion and it is directed vertically downwards. Then third one, the effect of air resistance. Resistance means opposition. The effect of air opposition is negligible or it is equal to 0. Then the fourth assumption, the rotation of the earth does not affect the projectile motion. So these are the some assumptions we have to make before going to study about projectile motion. Then next point, two independent motions of the projectile. Which are the two independent motions of the projectile? The first one is horizontal motion, second one is vertical motion. First one is horizontal motion. It is moving along the horizontal path with constant velocity. Horizontal motion with a constant velocity. Constant velocity means it is not having any acceleration, because what is acceleration? Acceleration is rate of change of velocity. Rate of change of velocity, but here velocity is constant, so there is no acceleration. Acceleration means always velocity is changing with respect to time. Here the velocity is constant and it is independent motion. Then second one, vertical motion with constant acceleration. For example, free fall. vertical motion with constant acceleration. You can take the waterfall or the free fall. This is moving in the vertical direction with constant acceleration. Horizontal motion with constant velocity, vertical motion with constant acceleration. These are the two independent motions of a projectile. Then next term, maximum height. Maximum height is denoted by h. It is the maximum vertical distance travelled by the particle. It is maximum vertical distance travelled by the projectile. For example, let us consider this is the ground or the surface. Here I am going to throw a particle. It is under the effect of gravity. Because of gravitational force, again it will come back to ground. So maximum height is what? The maximum vertical distance. This distance we can take it as maximum height. Maximum height is the maximum vertical distance travelled by the projectile. So which is the maximum distance travelled by the projectile? This point A and B. Observe P and Q points here. This is the smallest vertical distance. You can take another points X and Y. This is also small distance here. The vertical distance with maximum value, that gives maximum height. What is maximum height? It is the maximum vertical distance travelled by the projectile is called maximum height and it is denoted by h. The next point, range of projectile and it is denoted by r. What is the range of projectile? It is the maximum horizontal distance travelled by the projectile. It is the maximum horizontal distance. Suppose if I am going to take from M to N. It is the maximum horizontal distance. It is travelling from M to N. That gives range of projectile. What is range of projectile? The maximum horizontal distance travelled by the projectile is called range of projectile and it is denoted by R. The next term, time of ascent. Time of ascent is denoted by TA. What is TA? Time of ascent. What is time of ascent? It is the time taken by the projectile to reach the highest point from the point of projection. How much time is taken by the particle to reach the highest point? Suppose I am going to take in this diagram from M to A. This is the time of ascent denoted by TA. What is time of ascent? Time taken by the particle to reach the highest point from the point of projection. Point of projection is M. M to A is time of ascent. Then next term is time of descent is denoted by TD. It is time taken by the particle to reach the ground from the highest point. Means in this diagram I am going to consider from A to N. A to N is time of descent denoted by TD. Time of ascent is equal to time of descent. TA is equal to TD. What is time of ascent? Time taken by the projectile to reach the highest point from the point of projection, and time of descent is time taken by the projectile to reach the ground from the highest point. M to A is TA, A to N is TD. These two are always equal. Time of ascent is equal to time of descent. Then, what is time of flight? It is the time taken by the projectile to return to the ground from the point of projection. From the point of projection to the ground. When it comes back to the ground, the total time taken by the particle to move in the space, that gives a time of flight. If I am going to take this is a ground, I am going to throw a particle in the space, again it will come back to the ground. The total time taken by the projectile to return to the ground from the point of projection from M to N. The total time taken by the particle to reach the ground from the point of projection, that gives time of flight, and it is denoted by T. Now, time of flight is always equal to time of ascent plus time of descent, because time of ascent is what? M to O, time of ascent. Time of descent is O to N. Time of ascent plus time of descent, that gives total time, that is time of flight. Or you can write 2 times of ascent, or we can write 2 times of descent, because time of ascent and time of descent both are same here, both are equal. So that's why time of flight is equal to sum of time of ascent and time of descent, or 2 times of ascent or 2 times of descent. Time of flight equal to 2 into TA or 2 into TD. This is about time of flight. Is it clear? So these all are the basic terms related to projectile motion. If you understand all these basic terms, then it is easy to learn about projectile motion.